I am a former sailor. My ship was decommissioned back in 2007. The Navy gave her crew an option to transfer to another ship, or to go ahead and get out of the military. Fed up with the treatment, I opted for the latter. The USS Saipan LHA-2 had been in service since Vietnam. It was 40 years old and held together with rust and paint. Anytime we deployed, something broke. We would have to limp to port, and we, the ship engineers, would fix it, while the rest of the crew could take a leisurely leave whenever we pulled in to make our repairs. I worked with nearly a dozen other men and women in what was called the main space, where the ship's engines and main reduction gears were kept. It was a large, open space with 2 floors. The floors were covered in industrial metal sheets, secured into place with rivets. The plates had 3 kinds of rivets: broke, bent, and missing. The plates rattled like crazy, and every step you made, the stairs, ladders as we called them, were secured in place with a pot metal pin at the top and at the bottom. Everything in the place sounded like you were throwing pots downstairs when you walked. At the head of the main space was our central console. It was in an isolated room, with air conditioning, where the brass could sit and drink soda while the rest of us worked in 100+ degree temperatures, and tell us how we didn't work hard enough, or didn't make them look good enough for their bosses. While in port, when the brass wanted to grab a beer with his buddies, and then when the fires on the boiler were out and the space was relatively cool, we sat in the console for watch duty. From the console, we can sit in the CHENG, Chief Engineer's chair. A chair reserved for Chief Engineer. It was for the big cheese to sit in, not someone enlisted. But hey, he's on shore. You could also see the entire upper level from the main space, from that chair, making it ideal for watching standby. Nobody got in or out of space without your knowledge. It was your job to watch, to make sure nobody messed up with your space. The strange thing was, I would talk to other watchstanders over the years, and they would mention things that didn't quite add up on watch. One fella told me that he heard somebody running in the space, like all out booking it back and forth on the deck plates. He said at first it sounded like one guy, and then several. He was convinced someone was messing with him. But this didn't make sense to him, or to me either, as the space had a 6-foot bilge over the lower level. It would be considered a drop if someone were to just hop the railing. And you would hear them hit the bilge. All the entrances and exits to that place were dodged, mechanical hinges, and operated with a lever, so it wasn't a quick exit. If anyone had entered or left, the pressure in the whole place would have changed. We were on the very bottom level of the ship. I'm not sure the mechanics of it, but from the no-nonsense types that have felt presence or saw people walk in front of windows of the console, also common. Folks told of a chief that would wake you up if you fell asleep on watch in the CHENGS chair. The thing is, it's the job of all khakis, chiefs and officers, to wake you up if you're asleep on watch. But this one, no one had ever seen before. People would think we had a new chief, or after he left, question who it was and why he was in our space. Our shaft alley was generally creepy as hell. You never quite felt alone down there, and people reported seeing shadows moving about down there. The shaft alley was a 6-story ladder down into the space, and maybe the size of a double-wide trailer in the ship shaft, running through it. The path to the shaft alley was a rickety catwalk, right smack in the middle of the ship's hangar bay. It was shoddily constructed, even when it was in its prime. And once you navigated this gauntlet of tenants, you had the reward of your 6-story climb. However, due to a design flaw, or someone with a sick sense of humor, the light switch that controlled all of Shaft Alley was at the top of the 6-foot ladder. So just anyone can come and flick the switch, and your happy butt was in the dark. And good luck climbing that ladder. Thing is, no matter how ninja-footed you were making sound if you were trying to goof with someone. People reported having someone turn the lights off on them, and they started climbing the ladder and demanding they turn the light back on. The light comes back on. They finish their climb, and there's no one around. I never felt comfortable in certain parts of that ship. I told folks that there were places on that ship I would not go. Something just weirded me out in those locations. Without telling others what these places were, people would ask. The lower V? Behind the fuel oil pump? There were places on the ship that I didn't feel welcome. Or I felt like an extra presence watching me on my PlayStation over my shoulder. The O2 deck took them all, though. During your time as a sailor, you're expected to mess crank. What that means is, since the galley workers cook your food and feed you, you're supposed to help lighten their load by helping them out for a few months. Staying overnight to chop onions, making sure things are clean, things like that. Granted, they never came down and thanked us for making the ship move through the water by fixing the engines. That's neither here or there. I lucked out. I got to spend my crank time taking out officers' trash and keeping their hallways clean. It was long and thankless work due to the tyrant watching over the process. The Navy is saturated in tradition. The O2 level stood for officers. Level 2. It was the second floor for officers, where they slept, where they did all their officer things. Enlisted personnel were not supposed to be up there for any reason. Often, I had to explain why I was on their level to passers-by. One night, I was finishing my cleaning. I was struck with an overwhelming compulsion to run, just haul it as fast as I could out of there. I saw nothing that could have caused me to want to run. I didn't hear anything. It was just an urge. The same urge I think rabbits feel when they know a fox is near, but can't see it. That was the most scared I've ever been in my life. And do you remember what I said earlier about all the doors having dogs? Could you imagine having to run from something that you are sure was right behind you, but you couldn't see it, and having to undog and redog every door on your way out? The strange thing was, I ceased to feel that urge, like a weight being removed, the second I crossed the limit to the O2 level and crossed to enlist territory. I did not experience that again during the rest of my time cranking. About 3 weeks ago, around 1 a.m., I was at my job on the USS Little Rock at Buffalo Naval Park. I was with my friends, Caesar and John, who were also work and sleep over the ship during encampments. We all decided to sleep in the same room because Caesar brought his spare heater. Being on the ship isn't as scary as it sounds. There's always bumps and whatnot. But that night, I felt a presence as we walked into the room. We got there and settled all of our staff. Caesar and John decided to go to the bathroom before bed, so I stayed there. John told me if his phone went off, to text whoever back. So when they left, I got up and walked towards the phone, and right as I got there, I heard a loud scream from my room. Which would not be weird if it was in the hallway, because the encampment we do, both Boy and Girl Scouts, are over. I quickly jumped under my covers and covered my ears. Every 20 seconds or so, I would take my hands from my ears. And I would hear rattling through our bags. I didn't hear steps or voices, only rattling. When they got back, I decided to get some water without telling them anything. So John went with me to get some water too. When we came back, Caesar was freaking out, saying he heard people going through our stuff. They say the USS Sullivan's is haunted, but I truly believe that it's the Little Rock. I was on the USS Lexington, watching the Lewis and Clark movie in the movie theater that they had there. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw the sailor walking around the corner. He was dressed like an old-fashioned sailor. I quickly turned toward the direction that I saw him walking around the corner. I quickly tried to find some explanation for seeing him. The only reason I could think of was maybe he died on the ship, So as soon as the movie was over, I started telling my friends about it. They said that it must have been my imagination, but I think it was a lingering spirit not knowing he was dead. I didn't see the spirit until I was in the engine room. I heard heavy footsteps and turned towards the sound. There was a man I had seen in the theater. I gasped and my friend came over and looked where I was staring. The spirit had left, so she just said, "Stop scaring me." We were leaving the ship and I happened to glance at the top window and saw 4 men in white old-fashioned Navy uniforms. I thought, I've had enough. I'm going to research these spirits. I looked at the history of the USS Lexington and I found out that many of the men had once been on that ship, died during attacks. I found pictures of the same men I'd seen. I've decided never to go back on the Lexington unless I have to. While stationed at Oxnard, California, on the naval station there, I had the opportunity to go aboard several ships that have been decommissioned and taken to sea to be sunk by missile tests. Along with the other 2 swabbies, we all headed over to the area where the ships were tied. We went aboard the group there. The ship in the middle was an old World War II destroyer named Blue. USS Blue was tied up alongside several other tin cans, waiting to be hauled out and sunk. Porterfield was another. Sort of sad. I was on them to acquire a few items. One was Executive Officer Safe, from his stateroom. It was a very, very hot day, and down in the guts of the dead ship, it can get very, very hot, over 100 degrees. We were all in the officers' quarters under the ship, USS Blue, when one of the guys picked up a Chinese coin from the deck, after we helped him move out the standing drawer there. Also, finding some World War II cigarettes and a temporary commission for all officers during the Vietnam Krapla. We were all sweating, so damn hot, when all of a sudden, there was a movement of air. Then so cold we all got the goosebumps. Thinking something was strange, we moved to another part of the ship. Hot, hot. One of the guys said, "Let's go back in there." So we all did. And again, very, very cold. And some strange sounds, like a whisper. We left. We went over to the other ship and hot, hot. No cold spots at all. One of the guys said he had felt something touch him shortly after picking up the Chinese coin. No doubt there was something there. Trying to get the point across. Since it was World War II ship, I am thinking either someone that was killed aboard her, or maybe it was the coin. I'll never know. The USS Blue is now at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. I live in Los Angeles, and as you may know, there's a supposedly very haunted ship called the Queen Mary. Anyway, I went to this ship on a tour, not really expecting anything to happen. Well, the guide took us down to the pool room where many of guests that used the ship in the 50s and 60s swam. He was talking about the little girl who actually drowned in the pool when she was only 6 years old, and how there have been many sightings of her since then. I wasn't really paying attention, so I kind of wandered away from the rest of the group in a secluded area of the pool room. But the people who joined us on the tour were still in my sight. Then I saw this flash of blue just run past me, and I was obviously really freaked out. And then I heard this little laugh, like of a child. It was really dark, so I couldn't see all that well, but my phone had a little flashlight, so I used that. I turned around, and there are at least 4 pillars in the pool room. Behind one of them, I swear to God, I saw a blonde little girl in a blue party dress just looking at me. I, at first, thought she was part of our group maybe, so I said, "Hey, are you lost?" She just looked up at me and giggled the same way she did before. I just kind of walked away because I was getting really scared. I walked back to the group and I felt a tug on my shorts. I saw a little girl. The guide stated how this little girl was blonde and how she wore a blue party dress. I was just looking at him, and then all of a sudden, we all heard a giggle. I was completely scared, and the guy said, "Okay, let's go, everyone." Later, we went to the boiler room. My dad was before me, but I was the last one out. I looked up in this long catwalk area. It was made of solid iron. I heard that giggle again. And the little girl, the same little girl, ran past on the catwalk. I ran out of there so fast. It is so frightening to go back there. I went back there once before when I was around 5. And I do remember seeing the very same little girl wearing the same thing. And her and I having a conversation. Then her just disappearing into thin air. I never told anybody about that story until now. I caught her on camera because I was videotaping this event. And I still can't believe it today. I think she remembers me from 10 years ago. I'm still so freaked out. I wouldn't go back on that tour. It is way too weird for me. But it is really sad to see that girl is still there. And her not being able to move on. I know what I saw. And I will always remember it for the rest of my life. If you ever go to the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California, make sure to look for this girl. She's actually very friendly, but I'm not a fan of ghosts or the paranormal, yet I've had so many experiences. Just be careful if you go. So, haunted ships. Have you guys ever been on a ship at all, ever? Have you been on like a cruise, or maybe you went like fishing on a ship or something? A ship? Maybe a boat. Let me know. I've never been on anything like that because I don't know how to swim, and I refuse to get on one because I am terrified of large bodies of water. So yeah. But don't forget, guys, if you want to watch my last video, it will be on the top left, and my next video will be on the bottom left. My Snapchat, my Facebook, and my email will be in the description. Feel free to contact me there whenever you want. Although, I will say, Facebook and Snapchat, I always forget to check that, so probably email is best. And yeah, that's it, guys. But remember, there's always someone or something watching you.